You suck fail with Snikch, yes, yes!
And today I'm going to tell you why. Are your skills dubious with the Deathmaster? Do your shadowy dealings always fall through? Well, don't worry. Night Lord Blake Rat Blightfur is here to look after you. And after today, your Clan Eshin campaigns will no longer end in depression. As a disclaimer, this is not a guide for multiplayer. It would take more than a horde of ninja rats to explain why you're so terrible at that. My name is Blake, and I bid you my fondest welcome to Blake's Takes, where today I'll be giving you my take on why you're just awful with the Deathmaster. Is my take hot or not? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel out. Now we will show these man-things the true face of Eshin diplomacy.
This much I vow. The history of these days will be written in blood. By crushing the armies of our enemies, by seizing the weapons they thought to turn against us, we were fighting for our very existence. But if there are those who would deny us peace, refuse us our rightful place in Grand Cathay, then we will unleash such terrible vengeance that generations yet unborn will cry out in anguish.
Reason you suck with Snikch. Number 1. You don't know what to do in your first turns. Clan Eshin begins slap bang in the centre of Cathay. A powerful savage orc faction is at war with you, and they can actually be very scary to fight if you don't micro well. Use your poisoned wind mortar to focus on their boar boys. Use your slingers and gutter runners to do the same. They are the most dangerous unit, as they're the only unit that has the speed to catch your units, and thus need to be focused. Your units are faster than the greenskin infantry, so you can skirmish with them till your heart's content. You must avoid taking a direct fight with any of their units, as they will quickly cut down your low armoured troops. Instead, kite them back with your slingers and let the poisoned wind mortar do most of the heavy lifting. Once you've defeated your initial starting enemy, take the village of the moon and immediately begin recruiting night runners to pad your numbers. They are inferior to gutter runners in every single way, but you need numbers in the early game. In all decisions, food should be your utmost priority. When you defeat an enemy, enslave the captives to begin ramping up your food surplus. In the early stages of your campaign, food is far more valuable than coin. I'll explain why later. You can even go and ask your Eshin sorcerer to go out and steal some more food using shadowy dealings. Now that you've hired your night runners, it's time to set up an ambush. What I found during my testing is the savage orcs will send a force south to come and reclaim the territory they just lost. They will either sit and raid close to you, or they will try and attack the village of the moon. Sitting in ambush stance will make them come to you. If you're not in ambush stance, I find that they will often sit outside of attack range, so sit in ambush stance and have them come to you. Once you have beaten them, enslave them for more food, and then take the other minor settlement in the province. Don't expend food on the minor settlements you capture. You need to save the food that you get for capturing the major settlement of the province, Kunlan. Now, Kunlan can be quite a challenging target to take. The greenskins will often have yet another army in there. You'll be relying on your poisoned wind mortar to do a lot of the heavy lifting. The castle has a point where there are no arrow towers, so you can use this as your point of entry. Use the poisoned wind mortars to rain chaos down on the orcs, but you want to do this slowly. You want to ensure all of your globes hit their targets. Try and avoid shooting enemies that are mounted on the walls, as I find a lot of your globes will miss their target that way. Ideally, you want to be shooting targets just behind the walls to maximise the potential damage output of the mortars. When they have been sufficiently softened up, you can then send in your night runners and gutter runners to finish off the rest of their forces. Now once you've taken Kunlan, you want to expend all the food you have to get it to the highest possible level you can. This will springboard you into a competitive position with your neighbours and give you access to the units you need for the wars to come. Reason you suck with Snikch, number 2. You level up Snikch wrong. Snikch is a fantastic legendary lord with a lot of unique abilities. These abilities need to be exploited correctly to maximise your chances of success. Ancient Cunning in the blue line tree should be your absolute priority. Due to Snikch's passive extra 25% ambush success chance, this skill all but guarantees you an ambush from your stalk stance with Snikch. Then I like to proceed further along the blue line skills to pick up more goodies like increased post-battle loot and reduced upkeep costs. Now, it's not necessary to get Lightning Strike as Snikch, as your ambush success chance is so high, but I like getting it as a security, if the stalk stance doesn't yield me an ambush, and I suppose you can never be too careful, yes? But it's entirely optional, and I would actually probably advise not getting Lightning Strike due to your ambush success chance being so high. I'm just paranoid that there will be a time that I need it when Stalk isn't available, like when you're caught in a siege as an example, but that hasn't happened yet, so it's probably a bit of a waste.
No.
Then I begin to focus on his unique skill line, which has some absurdly powerful buffs in there, like Contract Loopholes, which increases your Lord Recruit rank by 3, and reducing your upkeep costs. Levels on Skaven Lords are very powerful, as it significantly boosts their combat potential, even more so than other races, as they get access to some excellent mounts and faction-wide boosts. You can also get Jump Scare, which basically guarantees an ambush whenever you attack in your stalk stance, while lowering enemy leadership and boosting your unit stats during ambush battles. It's extremely potent, and you should definitely not get Lightning Strike, just to be clear. Then I focus on his red line skills to buff his army. The reason for this is Snikch is already a very good melee lord with high melee attack and armor-piercing weapon damage, but he is not going to carry fights for you. He will quickly be torn to pieces if left in prolonged combat. He is designed to pick off isolated lords and heroes and sneak around the battlefield, generally making a nuisance of himself. You need to have your army do the heavy lifting. The red line skill that boosts gutter runners, for example, should be your chief priority. Speaking of which, reason you suck with Snikch, number 3. You don't know how to use gutter runners. Gutter runners will form the backbone of your Eshin legions. Clan Eshin gutter runners are extremely potent because of their armor-piercing ranged attack. But do you know how to use them? Gutter runners come in 4 varieties: gutter runner standard variants and gutter runners with slings, each of them having their own poison variant. The standard variant can fire while moving and can fire in 360 degrees. The gutter runners with slings are more of a traditional ranged unit. The usual variants are your bread and butter. Use them to distract the enemy from your key units by harassing and haranguing the flanks. You see, the power of Eshin armies going forward will still remain in the catastrophic damage that your artillery and weapons teams can bring to bear on your enemies. Gutter runners are excellent distractions, which can split up the armies of your enemies and confuse the AI. They will often chase the gutter runners in vain, giving your artillery and weapons teams plenty of time to pummel the enemy. They're also fantastic assassins. Eshin gutter runners can delete single units with withering volleys of their ninja stars. If there are a lot of dangerous single entity units, for example when fighting the lizardmen and their dinosaurs, I like to save my ammunition for their big dinos to delete those. The normal variants are also capable in melee combat and can be used to tie up and beat up other ranged units. Keep them away from dedicated melee units though, you want to skirmish with them. Cavalry will be the bane of gutter runner dominance, so focus fire cavalry units down first. Don't let them catch you in hand-to-hand combat. Keep pulling your gutter runners back while peppering the enemy with ninja stars. Even if they get caught, keep pulling them back and firing on the enemy. The slinger variants have far less utility, I find, than the normal variants. They cannot fire whilst moving and do not have a 360-degree attack cone. They do, however, still have their uses. They have better range and more ammunition, and they can arc their shots similarly to an archer unit. So they're actually very useful in sieges. They can effectively fire over the walls. The poison varieties of gutter runners are better, but be advised that they cost more to recruit and have a higher upkeep cost. They also require a tier 2 pestilent knave building, so in effect these units are only recruitable once you have a tier 4 settlement. If money is tight, or you don't have the required pestilent knave, then don't delay. They're not necessary. The regular varieties will still get the job done, even in the late game. Having poison is nice, but it's not necessary. The unpoisoned variants will still do a lot of work for you. So remember, use your gutter runners to distract the enemy from your key units, your artillery and weapons teams. Keep them moving around the flanks and the rear of the enemy to make the AI split up its forces to chase you. Focus fire any unit which is faster than you and can catch your gutter runners. They are your first priority. Then use your gutter runners to assassinate single entity units, lords and heroes. Do not let your gutter runners remain in melee with dedicated melee troops. Keep them moving backwards, taking advantage of their ability to fire whilst moving, their 360 cone of fire, and of course the nets that they automatically deploy, which reduce enemy speed. Use your slingers as more traditional ranged units, using arcing fire to great effect in sieges. They have more ammo and range than their counterparts, but do not fire while moving and lack the 360-degree firing. If you can't afford poison or don't have the prerequisite building, don't worry, the normal varieties still get the job done. Reason you suck with Snikch? Number 4. You don't get assassins early. Assassins are pretty good heroes. They only require the tier 1 hidden lair to recruit them, which only takes 1 turn to build and can be built in any settlement. And each hidden lair you build increases capacity for assassins, so you can get a lot of these guys very early if you choose. They can help Snikch assassinate key targets in battle while you pick up his blue line skills, as mentioned in Reason 2. They also boost your army's replenishment rate, and they can be used in the Eshin Shadowy Dealings contracts, so you can keep Snikch in play instead of sending him to do those jobs. Snikch also buffs all hero units in his army with extra melee attack, so that's a nice little bonus. Don't skip these guys, they're very helpful. Reason you suck with Snikch? Number 5. You don't know how to fight Cathay. You start in the centre of Cathay, and like a rotten cancer, you will metastasize through these lands, killing and eating everything for the Great Horned Rat. But unfortunately, you have the natives to deal with. They will try to thwart your nefarious plans. So how do we go about getting rid of them, I hear you ask? Well, the Cathayans have 3 strengths which will need to be neutralized in order for you to be successful. Firstly, you have their legendary lords, the Dragon Changers, Miao Ying, Chao Ming, and now Wan Bo. These lords are very formidable. They will do hellish damage to your units, lords and heroes, and they are your number 1 priority for assassination. During my testing, after they received a bit of damage, they will inevitably transform into their draconic alter ego. Let them come for your lord. They will often find the scent of his rat flesh intoxicating. They will be drawn to your lord like a moth to the flame. Keep your gutter runners hidden but close. Your assassins on the wayside. When the dragon lands to attack your lord, that is when you strike. Have all of your gutter runners open fire on the lord once they are in a good close position. Be as close as possible for the volleys to have the best effect. Whilst this is happening, send your assassin heroes which you recruited in Reason 3 to attack the dragon as well. For this to work, you need to keep your gutter runners unseen and hidden to the rear of your army. Make sure that they have fire at will turned off so they don't alert your quarry to your ruse. Once the dragon has landed, you can spring your trap. you will smite these invaders from the sky. Secondly, their magic will often consist of bombardment spells, which will absolutely clap the cheeks of your infantry. Try and listen out for the sound of searing dooms coming down, and move your units out of the way accordingly. Your nimble Eshin infantry should be able to dodge these spells with relative ease. A little trick you can do if they do have a metal wizard in their army is to drop a menace below on one of their units. They will often cast their bombardments on their own units, doing considerable damage to them. It can be a good idea to stock up on menace belows before a fight, so you can waste their winds of magic on your summoned clan rats, while bombarding their own units. These mages are laughably bad in melee, so if you get an assassin onto them, they will die quickly. Now, the other major strength of Cathay is their ranged units. These units will do a lot of damage very quickly, especially to your lightly armoured ninja rats. These are your next priority to get rid of. You see, Cathayan melee infantry is actually really bad at killing things, almost comically so. Even clan rats and Skaven slaves can hold their melee troops up for a good bit of time. They're very heavily armoured, so your rats won't do much to them either, but it's very easy to tie these soldiers up with just a few units. Have your Skaven slaves charge their infantry. They'll be able to hold for a surprisingly long time if the Cathayans don't have magic or ranged unit support. Then simply run your gutter runners around the flanks to eliminate the enemy ranged contingents. It is ironic that their best infantry, their ranged units, is also their greatest weakness, purely because the AI is so bad at defending them. If the AI simply spammed their melee infantry in the early game, you would likely run out of ammo before you'd manage to kill them all, and they'd probably be able to grind you down and win. But they don't. They always have a formidable ranged contingent for you to pounce on. When the ranged troops are dealt with, then envelop their melee infantry from behind to finish them off too. Remember, there are 3 strengths to a Cathayan army: their legendary lords, their magic users, and their ranged units. Their melee infantry is almost entirely defensive and will do very little damage to you. Even your chaff units of Skaven slaves will keep them busy for a surprising amount of time. Clog them up with Skaven slaves and send your gutter runners and assassins to deal with the priority targets. You will sweep like a plague across their provinces, and you must show no mercy, for Grand Cathay deserve none. Reason you suck with Snikch. Number 6. You don't know how to defend your settlements. As a Skaven faction, you have some of the most potent defences available to you in the game, but do you know how to use them properly? You see, Skaven factions are unique in the sense that their walls, as well as every other building of theirs, generates income, so you're encouraged to build them. I advise building walls in every settlement that you can get them. They're an excellent investment, as you will be fighting a lot of rebellions and other factions trying to muscle in on your turf. You'll certainly need them as Eshin, as you have enemies on all fronts. Now, even without walls, you have a lot of tools at your disposal to assist in countering a siege. Firstly, we need to talk about the auto-resolve value of your troops. Skaven slaves and clan rats have almost negative auto-resolve power, so you'll always be seeing defeats in auto-resolve no matter how paltry a force the enemy throws at you. This actually works massively in your favour. Because the AI believes it can beat you with so little, it will often not bother sending its full forces at you, letting you overwhelm their forces. If the AI sends a smaller force after you, but is saying defeat in auto-resolve, I implore you to try fighting the battle. Your overwhelming numbers and excellent towers will likely carry the day. Send your Skaven slaves into the enemy front line to soak up the charge, and then send your higher tier clan rats to wrap around and envelop the enemy. You'll be surprised how often you can actually win a battle which is advertised as a defeat in auto-resolve. Now, what happens when an enemy attacks you with a similar quantity of forces? Well, as a Skaven faction, you're in a unique position that you will also have a lot of units as well. This makes your garrisons the strongest in the game. You may not have the highest quality troops, but you can plug every hole with rats. If you're in a settlement which has tower building, then you have the most powerful towers in the game. Don't bother with the tier 1 or 2 buildable towers, try and save up for the tier 3 and tier 4 towers. These towers are incredible and can do a disgusting amount of damage, especially the tier 4 tower which fires doom rockets. These projectiles arc as well, which lets them reach targets in hard to hit places. They're fantastic against blobs of infantry. If the enemy has a lot of single entity units, then get the tier 3 towers which shoot warp lightning. Your settlement layouts are perfect for these towers. Tight, narrow corridors which you can plug with rats, while your towers bomb the trousers off the enemy. You'd be shocked at how many heroic victories I've managed to pull off with this strategy. Just remember that we will choke the streets with our dead before we surrender. Reason you suck with Snikch. Number 7. You don't know how to set up your provinces. Skaven factions can become extremely wealthy. They can trade and all of their buildings generate income. But do you know how to access that wealth? Whenever you conquer a major settlement, you should expend as much food as possible to get it to the highest possible tier. This is to unlock this coveted building here. The arcane generators can be built from level 3 and increase your settlement's income by 30%, going up to 50% at tier 5.
Nice.
They're a must-have for every province. Then you have your walls. These should be your priority in every settlement, both major and minor. As stated in Reason 6, they produce income and dramatically increase your chances of surviving a siege. They're the best walls in the game. Get them. Now, in every major settlement, you want to get the construction cavern and the pox cauldron, and get those up to tier 5 as quickly as possible. I'll explain why later in the video, but get them if you can afford them. You should also aim to get the Altar of the Horned Rat in every major settlement too. Again, I'll explain why later. If you cannot afford them, then you should look at the infrastructure buildings like rat tunnels and scrap heaps, if you're not planning on recruiting from the province. If you are planning on recruiting from the province, then obviously you want to get military buildings. Remember, it's very important to get major settlements up to tier 5 using your food surpluses as quickly as possible. Get the arcane generators in the major settlements and walls in both major and minor settlements. If you can afford to get a construction cavern and a pox cauldron, try and get those to max level as fast as you're able to do so. You'll hit a point with the Skaven when you're earning more money than you know what to do with, when you have a few provinces with generators under your belt. You should build frantically to further increase the amount of money you get from your warp generators. Invest the money into your settlements and you'll rapidly start seeing returns. Remember, if you don't know what to build, all of your buildings make money, so build anything. Get all of those slots building and see the returns drop in nicely. Reason you suck with Snikch. Number 8. You sleep on undercities. Undercities are an excellent way of generating food for your burgeoning empire. Unfortunately, as Clan Eshin, you don't have access to the Scheme of Doom. This scheme allows you to get an easy undercity with a summoned Warlock Engineer. You not having it doesn't mean that you shouldn't send out a Warlock Engineer to start cultivating the land that isn't suitable for you to settle. I like to send one to the Chaos Wastes outside of the Bastion to set up shop there. Then I immediately take that Warlock Engineer on the sea lane up to the ancient city of Quintex to start making use of the frozen terrain there. These are great for generating you extra food. You can use this build here to keep them hidden and generating you food, whilst expanding ever outwards passively to settle more undercities.
It's free real estate.
While it may cost you a bit of gold in the short term, these are a great way of bringing more food in, which you can then convert into more gold by conquering territory, boosting the settlement tier with the food you've been generating, and then setting up your overworld provinces, as explained in Reason 7. Don't miss out on them. They're a handy way of utilising territory which isn't suitable for you to settle, and exploiting territory which may be occupied by one of your allies. Reason you suck with Snikch. Number 9. You don't know how to manage rebellions. The native population will not be happy with the conquest of their lands. They will inevitably rise up in open arms against the new regime that you have inflicted on them. This is actually a great source of food for you, as your walls and garrisons will normally be enough to correct these protesters.
But I corrected them, sir.
But here's a fun fact that often isn't explained about rebellions, and that is the effect of province military buildings. If you have 0 military buildings, then you'll have a rebellion of low-tier trash troops. If you have 1 military building, then you can have a rebellion filled with a lot of dangerous enemies. So bear this in mind. If you own the province capital, then the rebellion will always spawn there. If you have managed to boost the province capital to a high tier and have managed to erect walls, then feel free to build military buildings, as your walls will be able to handle any rebellion that forms. If you haven't managed to boost the province capital to at least level 3, then I would avoid building military buildings out of it to prevent these higher quality rebellions from spawning. If you do get a higher quality rebellion form because you've kept military buildings, then you may need to hire a temporary garrison lord to help in the coming conflict. Cathayan rebellions are unique in the fact that they will sometimes spawn a caravan, which can be quite lucrative to kill. This, unfortunately, however, will change in the upcoming patch, so you likely won't get quite as crazy returns, but the food alone will make rebellions very useful to you. So remember, if a newly acquired province is a low level, check to see if there are any military buildings in the province, which will massively increase the quality of the rebellious troops. If you have a provincial capital with walls, then you will likely be able to beat any rebellion that is thrown at you, so you can ignore this. It's the low-leveled cities without walls that you have to be concerned about. If you do get a high-quality rebellion you can't beat, hire a lord and a few extra units to tip the balance in your favour. Another quick tip is to annoy clan Moors in your shadowy dealings with the Skaven clans. By doing so, you will get a public order debuff faction-wide, which you can use to coax more rebellions, and thus more food for your larder. They are a very willful people. Perhaps they need a good talking to. Perhaps something more. Reason you suck with Snikch. Number 10. You don't know the role of your heroes. As Skaven, you have access to some of the best heroes in the game. In fact, your heroes are so good in numerous categories that it's almost hard to make up your mind over which ones you want in your armies. Let us start with the base game heroes. The Assassin, which we have covered in Reason 3, the Plague Monk, and the Warlock Engineer. Now, these heroes are exceptional. Firstly, the Plague Monk can spam out Vermin Tides, acting as a pocket front line. These can be used to bog down and distract your enemies while your damage dealers do their work. They're amazing. They can spawn up to 5 units of clan rats through their Vermintide ability, and 2 Plague Monk units with their Pestilent Rebirth ability, although this ability costs far more Winds of Magic than Vermintide. In one unit they can create a front line of chaff infantry who are totally expendable. If you're making weapons team and siege equipment armies, these heroes are a must-have. Another must-have is the Warlock Engineer. Not only do they buff an army's campaign movement range, but they buff all ranged units' weapon damage, ammunition and reload speed. This includes your gutter runners. The backbone of the Eshin legions are buffed massively by this hero, so don't miss out. You should aim to try and get one of these heroes in all of your armies. Remember when I said in Reason 7 that you want to build construction caverns and pox cauldrons and get those settlements all the way up to tier 5 and those buildings to tier 5 too? It's because it's the only way for you to get more hero capacity for these units. You should aim to have these buildings in every province to boost the number of heroes you can have access to for your legions. If you have the Clan Moulder DLC, you get access to the Packmaster hero, which is also fantastic. They can spawn dogs and can eventually ride a brood horror. They probably don't have quite as much utility as a warlock engineer or your plague priests, but they still bring a lot to the table. If you don't have the capacity for a plague priest hero, then these heroes will fill a similar sort of role. Being able to spawn in 2 sets of rat wolves at once is no joke, and they can play havoc on an enemy's back line. The plague priest is more defensive and the pack master is more offensive, but I believe the plague priest to be superior because it has access to spells. Dropping a plague down on a bunch of infantry units is extremely potent. Then we have chieftains. It actually took me a while to see if I could even recruit these guys. I did eventually find a clan rat barracks, but they're quite average. They're your garden variety, no frills melee hero, but they're Skaven, so they'll break kind of quickly and don't do that much damage. They're by no means bad, but you've just got better options. And then there's Shadow Sorcerers. You should never recruit Shadow Sorcerers. They take up the same hero capacity as Plague Priests, and Plague Priests are superior in every way. Your Shadow Sorcerer in the early game is useful, just because it'll take a while for you to get a different Sorcerer, but only get Plague Priests in future. They have a better lore of magic, access to a mount, they do more damage. They're just superior in every way. As stated in Reason 7, you should also aim to get the Temple of the Horned Rat in every settlement you come across. They increase your Lord recruit rank faction-wide, and this stacks, so as you expand your territories and access this building, you can recruit Lords at a very high rank. But they also increase your hero recruit rank, which will make your already powerful heroes just that much better. Reason you suck with Snikch, number 11. You're not always the attacker. The Skaven Stalk stance is absurdly powerful, as it gives you a good chance of ambushing enemy armies, but this only applies when you're on the offensive. Attack enemy armies, avoid being the defender. Ambushing dramatically changes the odds of you winning battles, especially against superior forces, so you should always aim to be the aggressor, not defending. If you cannot reach an enemy in Stalk stance to make the attack, then you should activate the ambush stance and position yourself in such a way that you can spring the trap. It's vitally important to get the Ancient Cunning ability in the blue line of skills to boost your success chance on every Lord. Make sure you focus on it as a priority. If an enemy does attack you, it's always worth withdrawing to see if they have the movement for a follow-up attack. If they don't, you may be able to get a stalking ambush off on them the next turn. You must try to always be on the offense, as all Skaven factions. Reason you suck with Snikch, number 12. You have no friends. As Clan Eshin, you will be fighting on all sides. You're slap bang in the middle of Cathay, with potential enemies on all fronts. You must not let this happen. As you slay enough Cathayans, the Blessed Dread should start warming up to you. Offer to attack an enemy of theirs to get a non-aggression pact as quickly as you can. The same should be said of the Puppets of Misrule to your north. You need to befriend these people early, so then you don't get overwhelmed in the early game. Reason you suck with Snikch.
Number 13. Yes, you let treaty pacts last too long.
The Cathayans are dead. All of their factions scoured from the land with the help of your Dark Elf allies. Now, unfortunately for the Dark Elves, the land that they have taken from Cathay is very valuable to the empire you've been building, so you should rip up the non-aggression pact and destroy the Dark Elves as your next course of action to consolidate the Cathayan continent. You showed the Man-Things the true face of Eshin diplomacy, now the Elf-Things can taste it too. I noticed that the Puppets of Misrule are at war with Archaon the Ever-Chosen, and they are faring poorly against the favoured son of Chaos. I decide that my now former military allies have served their purpose, and I begin the arduous process of galvanizing a new military alliance with the war host of the Apocalypse. You see, our reward for loyalty to the Puppets of Misrule will be war in the north with Archaon, And within this societal and technological environment, an economic niche exists that we as Skaven fill as Skaven brew fills this barrel. The motions we choose, just the sum of forces exerted upon us. I chose to betray my ally, just as the myriad of poxes and plagues poured into this plague censer chose its form. The both of us now cogs in this machine that either profits or perishes in the eyes of the horned rat. It's not profitable to take the land north. Our undercities are happily placed there, uncaring of the overworld races that govern the surface. We will simply hold the hand of the strongest chaos thing that dwells there. Sons and daughters of Eshin, you, my beloved audience, you are the strength in my arm, the holders of my dreams. I've been Blake, delivering my take. Thank you all so much for watching.